What's up, guys? This is Jan for Chess24, and we will take a look at a very spectacular game from the Sinquefield Cup 2016, the super tournament in St. Louis. It's a game from the last round between Hikaru Nakamura and Liren. Admittedly, not very relevant for the final standings. Before this game, Hikaru was on -1 or 3.5 out of 8, while Liren was on 50%. But what the game lacks in relevance, it makes up in fireworks. So let's get straight to it. Hikaru plays the move 1 d2 to d4, which is an excellent move. Puts the pawn on a protected square, therefore way superior to 1 e4. And Ding goes for the semi-Slav. Not an opening I've seen Ding play all that much, but he has a broad repertoire. However, it looks like Hikaru felt like maybe some likes too many in the sentence already. Felt like challenging him in the main lines. Went for bishop to g5. Recently we've seen more e3, knight bd7 and then queen c2 or bishop d3 at top level. Problem with bishop g5, which in a way is a more logical move. You develop this bishop. The problem is black has a big choice. Black can go for the Botvinnik, dc, e4, b5. A total mess. Nowadays you don't see it much in practical play because black players choose to avoid it. It's not refuted. The problem is just you have to remember thousands and thousands of theoretical lines just to make a draw, and most guys feel it's not quite worth doing it. Another move that typically leads to a bit quieter play is knight bd7, when after e3 you can go queen a5, the so-called Cambridge Springs. It's playable but doesn't have the greatest reputation currently. Or the move played in the game, the move h7, h6. And this gives white a choice between very sharp play and more strategic play. More strategic play is what you get after bishop f6, queen f6. Here many align, but e3, the main move. When the question is, will white's slightly better control over the center outweigh the black two bishops? Lots of theory here as well. Black normally does hold his own. The alternative and the move chosen by Nakamura is the move bishop to h4. Once again, the most logical, keeping the pin alive, but giving black another chance to capture on c4. And that's what he does here. There are a few alternatives. You can always play solidly, but you don't really want to, already having played c6. Magnus Carlsen once experimented with g5, bishop g3, knight e4. But the main line is, and always has been, the move d takes c4, grabbing the pawn. e4, here black could transpose back to the Botvinnik if he so chose by playing b5 and after e5, g5. We're back in that territory, but this line has its own character because of the move order option that black has here and that he chooses. It starts with g5. Now all this e5 stuff doesn't make that much sense, so the bishop has to go away. Bishop g3, now black goes b5. And we've reached the starting position of what I believe we call the anti-Moscow gambit, even though don't quote me on the name. The name doesn't make a lot of sense. If we think about it, anti-Moscow gambit, I don't know what it's called, but it is a position that 10 years ago was all the rage at top level chess. Everybody spent lots of time analyzing this stuff extremely deeply. Then at some point, dudes just got tired of playing it, and the fashion moved to lines I've already mentioned. This hasn't been seen around that much. But both Hikaru and Liren felt like going for something sharp in this game. And we get this tabia. Black is a pawn up. The problem for black is he's weak in his position on both sides. So his king is in the center. For white he has this perfect pawn center, but he has a pawn down. And the black on c4 also kind of restricts his movement. So it's a very weird position, very hard to explain by general principles. So let's just make moves. The main move in this position is the move chosen by Nakamura, bishop e2. So always alternatives. People have experimented, starting with knight e5, starting with h4, starting with queen c2. But bishop e2 is a very natural developing move, keeping his options open. So is bishop b7, played by black. It's important to start with this, not with knight bd7, which allows d5. And of course, both sides very familiar with this. Bishop b7, now white is at a bit of a crossroads. You could go for castles, which has been discussed a lot. This is a move I've played myself, leading to very sharp play. after knight bd7, knight e5. This is one of the main lines. Or is it? I can't remember. I think it is. Or the move chosen by Hikaru Nakamura, the move h2 to h4. Very logical as well, trying to undermine the black structure on the king side, more or less forcing g4 before establishing this knight on e5, attacking the pawn. We're still in heavily theoretical waters. Black chooses between 3 moves here. I am familiar with all of them reasonably well. I once played the move h5, the greatest move, to defend this pawn on g4 against Levon Aronian. Went on to lose that game, even though I don't think it was because of the opening. But h5 nowadays has been established as a little too greedy. So black typically chooses between 2 moves that return this pawn, but gain him speedy development. One of them is the slightly cryptic looking rook g8. I believe that's currently the most popular move, when white chooses between knight takes g4, knight bd7, or bishop takes g4, and you get something like knight b7 takes, bishop f3, with a lot of theoretical discussions to follow. As far as I know, this is supposed to be quite playable. The other move is the one that Ding Liren chooses in the game. Looks a little more natural than rook g8. You start by going knight bd7, developing this knight. Of course, white could take this pawn, but then black has a better version. Doesn't necessarily have to play rook g8. He has also moves like b4, leading to very interesting play. However, there's one drawback with knight bd7. Not saying it's a mistake, it's a theoretical mainline, but there is a drawback that after knight takes d7, if you recapture with a queen, and this is the game, then you run into this pin with bishop e5. That's one big reason why a lot of guys like to start with rook g8 to eliminate this option, knight takes d7 followed by bishop e5. You can go knight takes d7, but this knight is a little off base, and after bishop takes g4, white is supposed to be a little better. So queen takes d7, bishop e5, of course still theory, and Ding Liren plays the most natural move. However, bad news for Ding Liren supporters around here was that he had already spent quite a bit of time, which, yeah, maybe meant that he was a little surprised by Hikaru Nakamura's opening choice. Queen to e7 is the correct move, and the move played by Ding. Bishop e7 might look more natural, but then it's going to be much harder to break this pin, because in general you want to go rook g8 and then move this knight away to d7. And after bishop e7, for example, queen d2 headed towards f4, it's very awkward for black to meet. So queen e7 might look artificial, but it's correct. Bishop g7 just runs into bishop takes g4. Therefore, queen e7, intending rook to g8, followed by knight to d7, is the right plan. And here, Nakamura shows understanding and having studied these positions very well. He goes for the move b3, undermining this construction on the queen side. And it looks like after cb-ab, black has achieved something. He's undoubled his pawns and consolidated his extra pawn, but white also achieved a lot. It's going to be very hard for this king to find shelter on the queen side. And he has opened a lot of squares for his pieces to use, because this pawn c4 and his cramping nature have disappeared. This is the game. In fact, Ding did take, I am not 100% sure about c takes b3. There are very valid alternatives here, like the move rook g8, which could transpose to a theoretical mainline after castles, because typically, instead of b3, white starts with castles, rook g8, and then b3. A lot of discussions here. Another question that is always being risen, is that English? Whatever, by b3 is, can black go b4 followed by c3? Might look very nice at first sight. You have this protected passed pawn, but in this particular situation, and kind of in general, but especially here, it's not a good idea, because his knight jumps into c5 directly, overwhelming square, and then white is going to open the queen side with a3. Once again, the black king does not have anywhere great to go. This is not a pleasant situation for black. So b3, I believe rook g8 might have been a move here, with the idea of meeting b takes c4 with b4. Very playable stuff, and I don't know, don't quote me on any of this. Knight a4, knight takes e4, bishop takes g4 is a total mess, but the computer does seem to believe that black is okay here. Fodder for the next discussions, should this line pop up again. Anyway, Ding played c takes b, naturally enough, a takes b, and the move pawn to a6. That not only reinforces b5, so it stops potential knight takes b5 sacrifices, it also prepares the move c5 in the future, because black wants to activate this bishop at some point. This is still theory, even though it didn't feature in a lot of games. It did feature in a game, I believe, Tregubov against Motilyov a while back. And now Hikaru plays his novelty, the move queen to c1. Very interesting move, preparing to improve this queen, either bring it to e3 or to f4 many lines to put pressure on this f6 knight. And keep in mind that the queen from c1 also eyes the c6 pawn, which could be a factor. Here, Ding finally goes for rook g8, intending to unpin. I'm not sure about the timing, but I have to admit I haven't analyzed this position very deeply. I'd be a little scared here with black to play h5, but the computer gives that as an option as well. Maybe preparing bishop h6, maybe solidifying this pawn chain a little bit. After queen f4, rook h6, the black position looks extremely scary, but I could not find breakthrough. Even though I wouldn't be too surprised if there was something nasty here. Maybe just queen e3. And slowly finish development, prepare d5. Does look scary. So rook g8, this is the typical move, preparing to remove the knight to either d7 or maybe to h5. Nakamura decides it is time to castle, and Ding goes for knight to h5. The alternative is knight to d7, and we're gonna study both these moves. Let's start with knight to d7. Tackling the bishop, this is also a move that was given by Nakamura in the press conference. He said he wasn't sure, maybe this was better because knight h5 forced the issue. After knight d7, the most natural, to me, looks bishop to g3 to defend this pawn, and it's not 100% clear how black should proceed. c5, which looks like it's according to plan, is too risky because it allows powerful piece sacrifice. Knight b5, ab, bishop b5. And this king in the center is not gonna make it out of the center in one piece. So that doesn't really seem to work. You could think about e5 here, which sometimes is an idea to, stop white from going e5, knight e4 himself and stake a claim in the center. But after d takes e5, this position is also a little scary. By the way, I forgot to mention one thing, which I should mention. Instead of rook g8 or h5, there was the option of going bishop g7 and short castles, which was brought up by Nakamura at the press conference. Doesn't look good to me either, after queen f4. It seems like white's just better. Now back to the position after castles. Knight d7, bishop g3 does not seem to give black an easy life. Therefore, Ding goes for knight to h5. Very direct play, attacking the pawn on h4. Maybe also preparing f6, followed by e5 sometimes. Mainly going after this pawn, his point also being that g3, f6 now is very pleasant. Bishop f4, e5, or knight takes f4, and black is doing pretty well. Let's say e5 takes, and knight takes f4, sorry, queen f4, fe5, or queen takes e5, this is probably stronger. And black has solved all of his problems while still being alive. So g3 is a little too slow. And the question is, what should white do to cover this pawn? Because it's not only about the pawn, it's also about the attacking potential. Queen takes h4, followed by g3. Does look like it could lead to a serious attack versus the white king. And this is where Nakamura played the star move of the opening. I'm assuming he was still in his preparation, but I am not sure. He did play the very powerful move d4, d5, breaking through in the center, which is a typical device in these positions, but why would it work here is a question. E takes d5 looks like it's attacking the bishop, and the point that white has is that he can just recapture. Go e takes d5, leave this bishop on press. After queen takes e5, a quiet but devastating move. Rook to e1, threatening very bad things on the e-file, and black can't extinguish both his queen and his king in one go. For example, long castles, bishop takes g4 check is bad news. Let's say king d8, bishop takes b5 is also breaking through. How to continue this line, I don't even know. Let's say queen f4, d takes c6, queen takes c1, rook e takes c1, A takes b5, c takes b7, rook b8, rook a8, and white wins. It's a weird sample line, I'm sure after king d8 there's other good moves, just to show that the black position cannot withstand this. And yeah, Nakamura, if he calculated all of this over the board, to my mind, it's a very impressive achievement. Maybe with his attacking instincts, he just thought this was natural enough. But it does all seem to work extremely well for white. I couldn't find anything after rook e1. Looks like it's just game over. Another line is bishop e7, bishop takes b5, queen c7, d takes c, a takes b, and knight to d5. And once again, white breaks through. Should I continue this line? Okay, let's continue it. Takes, takes, takes. Because this is not obvious yet. Takes, takes. And knight takes e7. All of a sudden we're in an endgame where white is a piece down, but this knight forks two of black's remaining pieces. And therefore, after rook g7, knight c6, king d7, knight d4, we've magically reached an endgame with equal material, where white has a significant advantage because of the misplaced black pieces. Not sure how forced this was, but it's cute, isn't it? Therefore, after d5, e takes d5 was very risky, and Ding decided against it, decided to go for the move queen takes h4, very principled. There were some alternatives. Rook to c8 might have been a move, just trying to reinforce the c6 defenses to meet d takes c6 with rook takes c6. And white would probably go queen e3, keeping a very serious initiative. Now after ed, his bishop is defended, and the position strikes me as unpleasant for black, even though it's not over yet. Another move mentioned, I believe, by Hikaru Nakamura was the move f6 here. Bishop goes somewhere, and once again it looks like white is in pretty good shape. But Ding plays the natural, queen takes h4, going for counterplay with g4, g3. The problem is he doesn't quite get there because white doesn't allow g3, but plays g3 himself. This kind of been a surprise for Ding. He was ready to meet g3 with queen g5, threatening to either exchange queens or take this bishop, but the next move is kind of unpleasant. I don't think Ding missed this one either, but it's cute nonetheless. D takes c6, and the point is, black of course would very much like to exchange queens, but if he were to play queen takes c1 here, white doesn't recapture, but instead goes c takes b7, leaves his queen alive, but works on getting a new queen all by himself. And this is just winning for white, because the bishop controls this square. For example, queen f1, well, anything. King takes f1, and you can't really deal with this pawn. However, Ding had a different idea. He wanted to go queen takes e5, which doesn't look so bad. You cover the b8 square. After c takes b7, he plays rook b8. And black still has his play. g3, knight takes g3 is in the air. Bishop c5 threatening queen takes g3 could happen at any given moment. So it's still pretty spicy situation. However, Hikaru delivers the next hammer blow. And once again, this blow is coming on the d5 square. First time it was pawn to d5. Now it is the horsey knight to d5, which messes up black's coordination. It stops bishop c5, clears the c file for the queen to either c6 or c8, and turns out there's not much black can do. For example, bishop d6 runs into this check, and it's checkmate if we queen. Game over. Therefore, this knight can't be tolerated. E takes d5, and queen to c8 check once again messes up black's coordination. He has to go king e7. This queen, as queens tend to be, is quite an irritant in the black camp. After rook takes a6, slightly surprisingly once again to me, there's absolutely nothing black can do. White has too many threats. This pawn is too strong, and there's also a bunch of mating attacking ideas. For example, bishop g7 runs into queen c5, let's say king d8, rook d6, king e8, bishop b5, king f8, and a nice little double checkmate to end the game. Instead, Ding decided to go for some desperate counterplay. There's not not much he could have done here. Either way, he goes for knight takes g3, hoping of course for fg3, queen g3 with a perpetual, but that is not going to happen. However, white only has one winning move here, and because this time around queen c5 check doesn't really cut it after king d8. There's no rook d6 check, and there is no direct win. But after knight takes g3, there is the move bishop takes b5. The problem with bishop b5 is it threatens checkmate in one move. Let's say knight takes f1, queen d7 ends the game. And surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, however, there is absolutely nothing that can be done about it. Try it yourself. There is no defense. For example, bishop g7. Nah, but I think you know this idea by now. Bishop g7, once again, queen c5, king d8, rook d6. It's just mate. So Ding tried the desperate knight e2 check, trying to distract this bishop. And the bishop better take, because it's never too late to mess up the winning position. King h1, queen h5, king g2, queen h3, and black mates first. But bishop takes e2 is more than good enough. White keeps almost all the trumps off his position. Black is not fast enough to orchestrate any counterplay here, because g3 is very well met by f4, keeping the f-file closed, the g-file closed, and white just wins. Instead, Ding tried f6, rook e6 check. Not the only way to win, but very efficient one, distracting the queen from the b8 rook. And after queen e6, queen b8, this pawn on b7 has a very bright future as a lady ahead of him, because it's very hard to stop queen c7 followed by b8 queen, or queen c8 followed by b8 queen. And therefore, Ding Liren resigned here. This was 28 moves, and I'm not sure if Nakamura, how deep his home preparation went, but it doesn't matter. It was a sparkling, attacking display, which goes to show, first of all, there is a reason why these lines are... I'm not sure if there's a reason, but in order to play these lines, you have to be extremely well prepared from both sides of the board. And Ding, this time around, wasn't quite ready for the challenge. Nakamura was, came armed with his idea with b3 and the slightly rare queen c1, even though I'm sure this is in many top Grandmaster's computer as well. And then his two star moves of the game were the first breakthrough d5 and the second knight to d5, not giving Ding any chance. This brings Nakamura back to 50% in the Sinquefield Cup, which was won by Wesley So with 5.5 out of 9. Ding Liren scored 4 out of 9, probably won't be too thrilled. But very nice attacking display by Hikaru Nakamura. That's why I wanted to share this game with you in one of my old pet openings, the Semi-Slav. And of course, you know, I hate to brag, so I didn't bring it up in this video. But if you want to see some more nice Semi-Slav games, maybe check out Nakamura Gustafsson from... No, I shouldn't even say that. Can we cut it out? Probably not. Anyway, check it out. All right. Thanks for watching, guys. And see you in the next video. Bye.